Hey guys, welcome back to Games of War. Today's episode is going to be games that failed at launch but have later gone on to achieve somewhat of a cult status, if you will. Many games fail at launch. It's just a fact of the industry, and it doesn't always have to be like a big budget, huge name game that fails and is forgotten and never thought about again and always thought of as crap. Many of these games that I like to talk about and celebrate are smaller niche games that, whether they got lost in the shuffle in a month, released with other big names that just drowned it out, whether it came out at the tail end of a console's life and never really had a chance to succeed. These games are the games that have spoken by the players. Reviews be damned. A lot of these smaller games come out, got shit reviews, and were written off immediately and were ignored, only to find a second life by people that actually go and give them a chance years later, discover how great they are. They go tell a friend. That friend goes on a message board, tells the world, they make a video about it, and these games are given a second life and held in very high regard, oftentimes becoming very expensive. I've got a stack of games here, and I thought this would be a great idea to get some conversation going about. This is just a small, kind of quick video just to get my feet wet, because there is a lot of games I'd like to talk about that have gone on to achieve this kind of status. And it's a great story for the gaming community and the industry as a whole to see that the reviews didn't get it right and that this game really is something special. I hope you guys enjoy and thanks for watching. I think the very definition of the topic that I'm talking about is a game called Haunting Ground. Now this is kind of a spiritual successor spin-off to the Clock Tower series. It's a survival horror game that upon release I was really excited for. I had been reading on it, and then the game came out and the reviews started coming in, and this game got tore up at the reviews. I remember seeing 4s, 3s, 5s, and at the time survival horror was dominated by the likes of Resident Evil, Silent Hill, even Fatal Frame to a lesser extent. So this one just got lost in the shuffle of other high-profile horror games and didn't stand a chance. And it's only that in the recent years this game has found its footing among horror fans. Some horror fans claim it's their favorite game of all time in terms of horror, and I've seen the prices on this rise on eBay and it become more and more sought after. And I couldn't be more pleased that people are actually not pleased with the price per se, that it's getting expensive, so some people may not be able to get it. But I'm pleased that the game is finally getting its recognition, because when the game came out, I ignored the reviews and bought it upon launch, and I fell in love with the game. And here's why I think the game has kind of achieved this cult status. The production value is phenomenal. This game features no load times in between rooms. And other games have tried this and done it, like Jak and Dexter, and it just really works wonders for a game when you're playing in this kind of corridor inside of a mansion, going room to room, not being broke up by static screens or a door opening, and just walking into that room and being fully immersed works wonders for the game, especially in this kind of game, because this is the gameplay style that carries over from Clock Tower, where a lot of the time you're being chased by a pursuer. Early on, you're chased by the mentally handicapped or challenged big hulking Debalides, I believe his name is. He's like just a terrifying figure. He's huge, and he thinks that Fiona, who is the main character of this game, a beautiful girl with a dog companion named Huey, he believes that Fiona is one of his dolls that he plays with and just tries to get her any way he can. And a lot of times you're going to be running from this guy, which I want to talk about too. This is a survival horror game, yes, but this is a game of being chased, and that is a very terrifying aspect, whether it's in real life or horror. Being chased is not fun. When somebody is pursuing you and you're trying to get away, running for your life, it's terrifying, and that feeling comes through in this game. You're able to run, and being able to go from room to room with no load times really keeps the immersion high. You can hide in this game, hide under beds, and it's quite a feeling when you're running from this huge guy in the beginning of the game. There's more enemies that chase you later on in the game. But getting away from him and darting into a room and jumping under a bed, and it switches to a first-person view, and you can see this guy's feet walking in the room, and you can see him looking around for you. You're hiding under that bed, and the suspense is through the roof, and I loved that mechanic. There's a fear mechanic in this game where as Fiona gets more and more scared, her vision becomes hazy, and it affects the screen, and it's a wonderful graphical effect. Haunting Ground is a really original game. The Clock Tower games were great, and I think this is a great extension of it. The storyline is very interesting too. You have a dream of a car crash that you were in. It's in your mind, it's very fuzzy, and you wake up and you've been chained in this castle. And this memory of this car crash is still strong in your mind. And you escape out of this cage, and you're in this giant castle where you find a German Shepherd who has been chained. You free him, and you kind of team up with the German Shepherd and explore this castle, solve the mystery of what's going on in this castle, why you're there, how you're linked to it. And the gameplay is great because you mold this German Shepherd as you play. And you can teach him to do things, you can have him attack people for you, and everything you do, you can praise or scold the dog, and that's going to shape his memory. And there's actually multiple endings depending on how you treat this dog, praising him and scolding him for doing things right or wrong. So that's a very interesting mechanic as well. The atmosphere oozes in this game. It's all very dark and kind of gothic looking. A fantastic survival horror game that was ignored by many people. I'm very glad this is finally getting its due because Haunting Ground is fantastic. Next up is Folklore, and it's no secret that the PlayStation 3 had a very rocky start. The initial price point of I think $600 and only a couple of exclusives available at launch. I remember Resistance and MotorStorm being the only games I had for a while, and people were waiting and waiting and waiting, and then Lair came out, which in my opinion Lair could be on this list, but not a lot of people agree with me. They don't like Lair, so I can't say that that's achieved cult status. So while everybody was bitching about the PlayStation 3 and waiting for the next good game, waiting for the next exclusive, Folklore was quietly released. And I don't know, I believe it got somewhat decent reviews at the time, but nobody paid attention or cared really. And it's really sad because if PlayStation 3 owners had been looking in the right direction, there was a gem that was released very early on in the system's life that would have kept them happy for some time. Folklore is a very interesting and original game set in the seaside town of Doolin, Ireland, and it involves two characters trying to uncover a past murderous history of this town and events that are happening present day. Now there's two characters. One is Ellen, who is a college student who receives a letter from her dead mother telling her to come to this village of Doolin. The second character is a paranormal writer for this magazine. His name is Keats. And he gets a phone call from a panicked woman saying that there's fairies that are after her trying to kill her in this village of Doolin. So naturally, smelling a good story, he decides to head there. Now upon getting there, all is not right. It's a very atmospheric town. It's just a beautiful town for early on in the PlayStation 3. Everything looks great. And the mystery unfolds as soon as you get there. You find your mother on a seaside cliff. She falls off to her death. As Ellen, you race down to the beach and then faint and wake up, and you're in one of the town's huts. And early on, Keats and Ellen go to this pub in the town, and to your surprise, it's completely run by like fairies and folks. These are mythological creatures describing murders that have happened in this town and a hag that has come to this town, and people start dying, and you are introduced to another world where you're able to supposedly speak with the dead. And of course, right away, Ellen is very interested in this. She wants to go over to the nether world and speak to her mother and find out what's happened, why she's been called here, why these murders are happening, and just what is going on in this town. And once you get into this nether world, that's where the gameplay kicks in, and it's very addicting. It's kind of got a Pokemon-esque quality where you battle these folks and these fairies, and as you kill them, you get their powers, so you're able to use their special attacks. And these attacks are best suited for taking on certain different styles of enemies and bosses, and it had a really good use of the 6-axis controller very early on in the game, where you kind of take the controller and pull back to like reel in the souls, like almost like fishing. And when you collect these souls, you're able to use these powers. And as you're going from the netherworld back to the town of Doolin, there's murders taking place in the town, and it's all wrapped in an enigma of this huge murder mystery that happened 17 years ago where children were dying, and there's overall unexplained things that are going on. Everything is just very interesting. I remember playing this game very early on and just being so wrapped up in this mystery of what was happening in this town. I couldn't stop until I finished. The dual stories intertwine, and it's just a lot of fun to play. I can't recommend this game enough for fans of fantasy, almost like horror, mystery, and fairy tale overtones throughout. Folklore is definitely a cult game that should not be missed. Once again on the PlayStation, I've got another game here that was destined to fail early on. It was called a God of War clone. It didn't get that good of reviews. At the time, Square Enix wasn't looked on as doing their best work at this time. But Nier is a game that came out that I was interested in right away because I knew it was a spin-off of the Drakengard series, which is another series that was kind of mediocrely received. It's got its fan base for sure, but I absolutely love the Drakengard games. And this game spins off from one of the alternate endings of the Drakengard games, where the world is overtaken by this plague called the Black Scrawl. And that's where you play as Nier, who's like a middle-aged father trying to save his daughter who has gotten this Black Scroll disease. And you go on this adventure in this land that almost kind of reminds me of Shadow of the Colossus style land. It's just open and very desolate. It's got that look to it where everything is just kind of frozen in time and forgotten. And this game has a battle system that isn't anything very special. It's action, so you're not going to be doing any turn-based stuff. It's an action battle system. There's lots of blood. There's lots of swearing. As Nier, you meet up with the Grimoire Weiss, who is like a book, who is one of the most foul-mouthed characters I've ever met. Between the book and one of the female characters you meet, there's a lot of swearing, there's a lot of blood, but the magic in this game comes from the gameplay styles and how they switch up. One minute you're playing an action RPG, then you're going to be playing kind of like a text adventure, then there's a survival horror with fixed camera angles. Totally surprised me and caught me off guard the first time I played it because I hadn't read anything on the game. The gameplay all seamlessly works itself into itself and creates a game that's very special. And add this with one of the most atmospheric, beautiful soundtracks that I've ever heard in any game. The music complements this game so much so that it's, as soon as you hear a track from Nier, you're going to know it's from this game, and it just perfectly goes with the game. This definitely is a cult game. It has built up a reputation over time as being very quirky, a quality game, and fans of Drakengard definitely need to check out Nier. It's one of my favorite games of last generation. I love the different gameplay styles and the story and the sadness and despair overall of the world. The gameplay, admittedly, isn't the most exciting thing in the world when it comes to the combat and hacking and slashing. You've done it all before. But there's something about this game that I just can't get enough of. There's actually something, a big treat for those that complete the game and are willing to put some more time into it. So definitely check out Nier if you haven't. I couldn't do a video of this nature and topic without mentioning what is, in my opinion, one of the greatest cult classics of all time in gaming, and one of my personal favorite games of all time, that is Snatcher on the Sega CD. Now, this game failed for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was only released on the Sega CD, a system at this point that was dead, that was thought of as a full-motion video game system. It was kind of a joke in the industry, and it came out at the very end of the system's life to boot, so nobody paid attention or cared about Snatcher. It was the players, the gamers, that would not let this game die. They celebrated it, they talked about it on message boards, they made videos to tribute the game, and it has survived. The game has become an ultimate cult classic. It's getting very expensive, unfortunately. For those that do want to play it, it's quite expensive to have an original copy. But this is from Hideo Kojima, the maker of Metal Gear series, and the storytelling is brilliant. It's a very futuristic, kind of Blade Runner-inspired game. You play as Gillian Seed, who suffers from amnesia, and he is a junker taking down the Snatcher menace. Now, Snatchers are kind of like Terminators. They're artificial cyborg beings that are killing people and taking over their identities. Now, this game is a point-and-click visual novel style, so you're going to be going from location to location. You're going to be solving murders, very grisly scenes. You're going to be getting information out of people. You're going to be solving clues. You're going to be piecing together storyline bits. And if you have one of these, you're going to be shooting lots of shit, and it's awesome. This makes the game a lot more enjoyable, in my opinion, so get yourself a Justifier. One of Kojima's best games, in my opinion. This is a true classic. If you're a visual novel fan, if you like Metal Gear, you're going to appreciate the little nods and winks to the game. You have a little sidekick named Metal Gear, who's a little machine cyborg that follows you around and helps you analyze data and solves clues. A very visceral game, expertly written, a very adult theme and setting. Snatcher is a game that was far ahead of its time. I believe it stood the test of time. It's as fun as it is to play today as it was back then. It has aged beautifully and is one of the true classics of the Sega CD. If you are in any way, shape, or form a fan of Kojima's work or story-focused visual novel, point-and-click style games, this is the masterpiece, which all others will be judged. I love the game. It is perfect, in my opinion. You gotta check this one out if you can. So I hope you guys have enjoyed taking a look at some cult classics that have survived the test of time. I find this topic very fascinating because what exactly makes the game survive? What is it about the game that makes it stand the test of time and be cherished and talked about by gamers long after its release and failure? Let me know what you guys think. What are some of your games that are cult hits that failed upon release but have kind of taken on a life of their own? I love talking to you guys. Thank you guys for watching. As always, Games of War is nothing without you.